Welcome back to Power Play, and a little taste there of the back and forth between the Conservatives and the Liberals in question period. It dominated the majority of question period. In fact, all of it focused very much on the cost of living ahead of Thanksgiving. Let's bring back the front bench to talk about the reasons for that. Brian Gallant, Kate Harrison, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie. Brian, I'll start with you. I wanted to talk about this today because in the previous weeks when we were talking about the promises made by the Liberals, everyone was indicating like there's going to be a timeline, the deliverables will matter here. They imposed this timeline of Thanksgiving, and now that timeline like dominated every single question the Prime Minister or any of his ministers, almost every single question they got in question period. Although I have not yet seen a turkey that costs $120, is that deadline, are they coming up hard against that deadline politically too?
Let's start off by acknowledging what we discussed last week, the idea that affordability, the cost of living crisis that people are feeling really is the dominant issue. And that's what's going to most likely be one of the most important issues moving forward, as well as we go into whenever the election campaign will start. And Mr. Poilievre knows that, and it's smart of him to focus on it. And although there's other things he could have brought up today, he focused in on that. Now, with regards to the timeline, you're right. I mean, anything to happen when it comes to government certainly takes, many would argue, too long and a lot longer than the few weeks that they gave themselves when they declared this self-imposed deadline. So you're right to say that it was pretty aggressive. Now, of course, this is maybe they're hoping that it's not going to be a government measure, right? There's a bit of a, hey, you all need to figure this out. And if you don't, there will be government measures. So it's kind of interesting to see that approach. And it's one in which I think that they don't really have the answer of what they would do. They're very hopeful, and they're trying to be very strong on their message, at least from the outset, that the grocers are going to have to figure this out. Now, the grocers are obviously going to have their reasons. They've given it in Parliament before already through committee work and obviously through media. They have the reasons that they think that they're not able to do that. So you're right. I mean, we're just days away. The idea that they're going to come up magically with something that will work and something that will be felt before Thanksgiving, that's certainly, I think, the latter's out of the question, and the former will be quite difficult as well.
I mean, it's almost like they've set it up so that they have to say, okay, there's an agreement, Kate, to do X, Y, and Z. And then they can at least say to Canadians, hey, we got an agreement by Thanksgiving. But my guess is, to Brian's point, that's not easy given the parties involved.
It's not easy given the parties involved, and it's more than just the retailers. You've also got suppliers and producers that are feeding into the system. And the challenge here is that it's going to be all of those parties coming together to maybe table something that might have an impact on pricing. It's a really sophisticated and complicated problem, one that the Government of Canada, I think, knows about based on their conversations with those stakeholders. But for some reason, you know, in their communications, they're making it seem as though it is not as complex as it is. The reality is that there's only a few options on the table. There's squeeze producers if you're one of the grocery retailers, which means you might have less product and availability on the shelf, which people won't like. You risk doing nothing and then risk a windfall tax, which frankly would probably be passed on to consumers anyway. Or you start looking at actually regulating the price of certain food items, which is what they do in countries like Venezuela, which also results in problems for consumers. So there's not a lot of pretty options out of this. And I think expecting the grocery retailers to come up with a systemic problem, a fix to that in a couple of weeks is really naive on the part of the government. And they now, by owning this issue, are going to be the ones wearing that outcome when ultimately that plan does fall flat, at least in the eyes of consumers and Canadians.
My guess is, like some European countries have done, they're going to try and put together like a basket of a few things that we all buy frequently and maybe be able to tell us, Tom, that the prices are not going to go up or they're going to stay the same. But even that kind of measured against what they promised, and the idea that prices could go lower by Thanksgiving is going to be a tough sell.
No kidding. And this is something that Poilievre spotted long ago, and he's been working on it very effectively. And he did it again. I'm not sure that there is going to be a $120 turkey, but it's a nice image for him to put forward. Today in Montreal, the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada pointing the finger directly at businesses, saying you're stoking inflation. So there's a bit of a set-to in preparation here between the Liberal government of Justin Trudeau, who has already said, I want grocers to start behaving and doing something differently between now and Thanksgiving. That is coming up now. And he could wind up with well, we have a system to control the market with regard to eggs and milk, but is he going to try to come up with something that goes even wider than that? As you say, maybe other things in the food basket? I don't think that they're going to go down that path, frankly. But there is a lot to be said about the fact that those businesses have taken advantage of the sudden inflation in the post-pandemic period, and they really started jacking up their prices. And anybody who's bought groceries in the last year knows that Poilievre is right. And Trudeau has said he's going to do something, and now the onus is on his shoulders. And is he actually going to be able to deliver? I don't think so. And I think that he's going to wear this one, and Poilievre's going to keep hammering away on what we call pocketbook issues, things that are important to the average working Canadian family. And this is not the traditional base of the Conservatives, but boy, is Poilievre ever picking up a lot of votes by talking to that group of people in Canada.
And I just
Rob,
got to chime in there because Tom.
No, sorry, I've got like a minute left in the whole show. I'm so sorry, Kate, and I got to give 30 seconds to Rob. Rob, last word to you.
I was just going to say, I don't know where Mr. Poilievre shops. It must be like Pusateri's or Cumbrae, because you can get a turkey at Loblaws, a 12-pound butterball is $43, which is not cheap still. I understand why they're hammering away at this. I just don't understand why they have to sort of add all the stuffing on it. I mean, the actual prices that people are really paying in the shops that most Canadians shop at are to Tom and Kate and Brian's point, really a sticker shock for all of us. I think that we talked about this when Trudeau promised this measure. I don't know what he's going to be able to do, because if he taxes the grocers in some way, we're going to get that expense is going to get passed on to consumers. So he's really in a tough spot. I really don't know. You can't do like his zap your frozen, as his father mocked the Tories in the 1970s when they were talking about wage and price controls.
No, I guess not. Well, we'll see. We'll reconvene in a week and be able to see if prices are astronomically lower by then. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much to our front bench, Brian Gallant, Kate Harrison, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie.